So this week, Justin Trudeau had to appear before a very formal committee in Ottawa. And he had to do so because of a controversy that has been swirling around his government for several weeks now. And that, of course, is the Wii Charity scandal. So I know that a lot of you have heard a lot about this scandal. There's been so much information that has come out with regard to this over the last few weeks that going into the long weekend, before you sit down with friends and family, if you're allowed to do that with socially distanced measures in place, I just wanted to kind of piece everything together for you so that you understand the timeline of what's happening and why this has been such a scandal for the Trudeau Liberal government. So at the heart of this scandal, what the allegations are, or the speculation is around the Justin Trudeau government, is that the Justin Trudeau Liberal government entered into a very weird sole-sourced or non-competitive arrangement with the Wii Charity, a $900 million student grant program that normally, under any other circumstance, would have been administered by the Federal Public Service. But they entered into this really sort of strange, rushed, sole-sourced-ish contract for $900 million, where it turned out that there was going to be all these administrative fees paid to this charity. But it turns out that both the Trudeau family and Bill Morneau, the finance minister, Trudeau's right-hand man, both their families have significant ties, monetary ties, to the Wii Charity. So that's what I want to break down for you today, is what happened, what's been alleged, what are all these different things, and what do we know to date, and what are the outstanding questions that we're looking at. So, first of all, I think we should start with the Wii Charity itself. So I'm just gonna read from their own website. It's Wii Charity is an international charity that partners with communities through a holistic, sustainable development model that equips families with the tools and skills they need to lift themselves out of poverty. So we know that the Wii Charity has revolved around these Wii Day concerts or events. In fact, some of you watching may have participated in one of these things. And their whole business model was to get high school students in countries like Canada involved, fundraising for them, and then ostensibly to do stuff overseas. Now, over the years, organizations like, for example, Canada Land have reported that there's been some inconsistencies with what's actually been achieved per what the organization itself, its stated objectives have said. So that's really what the charity purports to do. But at the end of the day, the two founders of this charity, the brothers that are sort of the front face of it, they're sort of like celebrity entrepreneurs. I mean, like, for example, if you go onto my Twitter feed right now, one of the guys actually did, I think it was an episode of MTV Cribs or something like that, showing off this like rather posh camp house safari lodge that he had, or somebody had, in the middle of, one of their areas in Africa that they were purportedly doing charity work. Really weird stuff, very celebrity vibe, right? Very similar to Justin Trudeau. Now, let's go through the Trudeau's family history with this organization. So Trudeau, as a private citizen, before he became Prime Minister, etc., had spoken at Wii Day events. But what came out recently was that only after the Trudeau became Prime Minister in 2015, we engaged Margaret Trudeau to speak at approximately 28 events between 2016 and 2020 and received fees or honoraria amounting to about $250,000. His brother received, for similar events, $32,000. And Sophie Gregoire Trudeau, Trudeau's wife, received $1,500 for expenses for participating in a Wii event, and continues to host a podcast with Wii. And the first podcast was published in May 2020. Later on, it came out that Justin Trudeau's mother was also paid a significantly more amount of money than what was initially reported, in that it was like reimbursements for travel expenditures in the total area of like $167,000 or something. So the total amount that the Trudeau family has received from Wii is quite a bit. So there is a monetary relationship between the Wii Charity or the Wii broader organization. They have all of these shell companies and holding companies and stuff that they admit themselves, a committee, is very complicated. But they have a monetary relationship with members of Trudeau's immediate family. Then we need to go to Bill Morneau. Bill Morneau's family is also deeply tied into the Wii Charity. So in 2017, so 2 years after he became finance minister, so he knew the rules, Bill Morneau, the Wii Charity covered $41,000 in travel costs for him and his family. His daughter is currently working as a contractual employee, as in an administrative role with Wii. This was again reported in the media. And Claire, Morneau's other daughter, has spoken at 3 Wii Day events and had her book blurbed by charity co-founder Mark Kielberger. So Bill Morneau's wife and daughter, and we also found out, flew from, this just broke this afternoon, from Nairobi to a camp compound owned by Wii when they visited Kenya in this trip that was paid for by Wii, or partially paid for by Wii. We're not entirely sure. And if that happens, there's actually Accountability Act writ large. So if Bill Morneau, it sounds like he did accept this travel. We've asked the Ethics Commissioner to investigate this because under the Accountability Act, ministers of the Crown, they're forbidden from accepting sponsored travel, especially a finance minister with an organization that could be the recipient of federal funds. So there's all of these ties between two of the most powerful ministers or powerful people in Canada, Justin Trudeau and Bill Morneau, and the Wii Charity. Okay, so there's ethical issues in there about sponsored travel and whatnot, but now we start adding into what happened earlier this year with this Canada Student Jobs Program. So I'm going to read you the timeline of this starting in March. So on March 27th of this year, the Wii Charity started to experience some problems. In fact, on that date, the former board of directors, she testified that that is the date that she resigned from the Wii Charity, from her position. The board of directors chair, it's a powerful position for any charity, and it's a really important one because they have oversight of the governance, or a lot of responsibility for the governance of a charity or a going concern like this. So I'll just read from you an excerpt on what happened, what she said happened. The former chair of the Wii Charity Board of Directors told MPs at the House of Commons Committee that speakers were not being paid. They were told that speakers were not being paid for appearing at Wii Day events. So we know that Margaret Trudeau and Alexander Trudeau was paid for their speaking fees. The Board of Director chair had been told that there was no speaking fees paid to speakers. And we've also heard other people, like for example, Theo Fleury. We had reached out to him to speak, and he was told that there was no speaking fee involved. So there's a bit of a discrepancy there, right? In the meantime, the board of directors chair also said that there were layoffs that were happening at Wii during the pandemic, that one of the co-founders had been traveling to Kenya, and they were asking questions like, we need to see financial evidence of the need for all of these layoffs. Why are you traveling? And they weren't being, the board members, or she wasn't being given access to this chief financial officer. She wasn't getting the information that she needed to conduct her fiduciary obligation. So she resigned. And that's on March 27th. Now, this is really important to note because this charity was already having organizational or governance problems that should have been a red flag to anyone looking at this organization at the end of March. Then all of a sudden stuff starts getting really twisted. According to the timeline that has been pieced out through the media and through committee testimony, we know that on April the 9th, the Wii Charity sent a proposal to the government to essentially deliver aid to students. The number was, they're saying 8,000 students, and access to additional incentive funds and long-term mentorship opportunities. So they sent them a proposal for something that looked a lot like this Canada Summer Jobs Grant that was announced a few weeks later. So that is April the 9th. On April the 19th, the Federal Employment Department contacts Wii. So a senior official with Employment and Social Development Canada called Wii to explore potential options for a student service program because of the organization's previous involvement with the department, or at least that's what they claim. Anyways, then on April 22nd, all of a sudden, surprise, surprise, federal government, Justin Trudeau, announced the Canada Student Grant Program, $900 million to be allocated to students. Then on April 23rd, so the day after this proposal was put forward to the public, without sort of any opening, like, I don't think that there was any, at that time, announcement saying to other charities across Canada, hey, we're looking for a partner to help administer this. Please get in contact with the government. On April the 23rd, originally, the founders said that the Kielburgers said that they heard from Trudeau's office on April 23rd about the volunteer program or the potential to work with them. They've later retracted that statement, saying that they misspoke. Interesting, though. Then on May the 5th, the COVID Committee of Cabinet, so Cabinet is like, you've got to think of it as the Board of Directors for Canada, the Canadian government, formally recommended that the Wii Charity be used to administer the grant. Wait, what? So you've got this, the grant program announced on the 22nd. There's all this conversation with Wii. No other charity is really being reached out to talk about if they could deliver this. The public service isn't being used to deliver this. And on May the 5th, all of a sudden, Cabinet formally recommends that the Wii Charity be used to administer the grants. On May the 5th, the same day, Trudeau's advisors talk to the Wii Charity and they start implementing the program. Now, this is really weird because on May the 8th, Trudeau claims that this is when he became first aware of the charity's proposed involvement in the program. Well, that's weird, right? Trudeau was, then he says that on May 21st, Trudeau was told by the public service that they had done due diligence and were confident in the recommendation. And on May the 22nd, full cabinet approves the creation of the Wii Charity involvement with this program. We know that Justin Trudeau, by his own admission, did not recuse himself from that cabinet decision. And cabinet, just so you know what that means, this is the group of ministers that approve public spending. So Trudeau apparently was in that meeting and didn't recuse himself, even though the Wii Charity had paid all of this money to his family, his immediate family members. And Bill Morneau, the finance minister, was also in this meeting and didn't recuse himself. Now, all of this, doesn't it just seem like really coincidental that all of this kind of just happened? So let's keep going. So then on June 23rd, the agreement with Wii is signed to do this. June 25th, Wii is announced as the partner. And on June 28th, that's when the Conservative Party of Canada called for an investigation, given that there was kind of all this sketchy information coming out about this. And since the end, since this came out, we found out on June 30th that Wii Charity received $30 million from the federal government to front end the project. We know that there are tens of millions of dollars given to this charity to for administration fees. And then we found out that the charity has, millions and millions of dollars of real estate assets, especially in Toronto, really posh real estate assets. And that the entity that the contract for this $900 million program administration was actually signed with was some sort of a weird shell company. It wasn't actually even the charity itself. So there's all of these questions, there's the package of issues that we have to have concern about with regard to both the finance minister and the prime minister's familial relationship with the charity that they're giving all of this money to under this like very friendly, non-competitive arrangement, number one. And then number two, there should be all of these red flags on how did this decision get made, especially since we know that the charity itself was having governance issues. You know, if you have a small business, or even let's say you had $10,000 to give to a contractor for some sort of home renovation, would you give your money to, or your project work to a company that didn't really have management? No, you'd be like, well, I'm not sure you're going to get the job done, right? So there's questions about the due diligence that was done on this charity. The holding company that I mentioned there, that was actually signed with, apparently it only had its charitable status for like a year and a half or something, and it hadn't really delivered anything. Then there's also been questions raised about these sort of nebulous series of companies and holding charitable organizations all under the umbrella of the Wii entity. There's Me to Wii, there's the Wii Charity, there's these numbered things, and even the co-founders themselves under oath at committee said that, well, you know, it's a very big organization, there's a lot of, you know, it's very, you know, vague. I can't remember the word they actually use, ambiguous or something, but something to the effect that there's a lot of complexity. Media reports have raised questions about why it is we know that the foundation itself has actually sent money or assets or something to entities within this umbrella that might have a for-profit component. So there should, like, first of all, there's the conflict of interest, which is super bad. The alleged conflict of interest, because this is under investigation by the ethics commissioner, still to be determined. Then there is the question of diligence. Why would the government engage in a contract that is so big with an organization when there's so many red flags? So that's really what the scandal is. Now, why should you care about it? Especially if you're a Liberal voter. You know, if you're a Liberal voter, you're like, look, you know, he was just trying to do something for the children. Well, the reality is that the public service could have administered this program. They figured out how to deliver the serve. And why did they have to sole source it? Why not use, and if you're going to use a charity to administer it, why not use a reputable charity? One that, you know, well, a charity with perhaps a little bit more solidity in terms of its governance, one that didn't have its board of directors chair resign at the end of March, right before all of this happened. Why not use something like the United Way, let's say, right? So you should be concerned about this because of the trust element with government. Right now, as the Canadian public, we're being asked to trust the government a lot, with a lot of things, right? We're being asked to trust the government on things like shutting down the economy due to the pandemic, or certain public health measures that might invade our personal civil liberties. We're being asked to trust the government with that in order for the best interest of this country. What happens in a situation like this, where Parliament has been suspended and Justin Trudeau has, you know, with the NDP, they shut down Parliament until September, to have so many questions about ethics and accountability and trust surround the government. Again, if you vote Liberal, you should be saying, at a time when I'm being asked to trust the government is doing a lot of things that appear particularly untrustworthy. And that's a problem for democracy, and it's a problem for your civil liberties. Now, I want to remind all of you something. You know, Hollywood portrays the end of democracy, or, you know, these massive turnovers in government where, you know, you see civil liberties being upended, like A Handmaid's Tale or something like that, with these big dramatic revolutions. But actually, what I've seen in our country over the last several years is this quiet drip erosion of our democracy and our rights under this prime minister. Again, regardless of how you vote, you cannot argue that the SNC-Lavalin scandal, where, you know, the prime minister allegedly interfered in the independence of the judiciary, was something that protected our democratic institutions or instilled trust in the government. Nor can you argue that all of the questions surrounding this massive amount of money and the ties to these families are something that engender trust in the government or protect our civil liberties or protect our democracy. And that's why you should care about the Wii scandal. at the end of the day, the Trudeau Liberal caucus, the backbenchers who ask him fawning questions when he comes to committee and protect him on this, they should be held to account as well, because they're complicit. Everybody of all political stripes should agree on one thing. This sort of behavior that doesn't engender trust should be held to account. And this isn't the first time this has happened to Trudeau. He had an ethics violation, major one, with the Aga Khan Island when he took a trip to a billionaire's island, who, their charitable foundations have a massive amount of support from taxpayer dollars. Then we had the SNC-Lavalin scandal that he had a negative ethics finding on as well too. Now he's on number 3 with this, both him and Morneau. They should know better. They have lost the moral authority to govern long ago, but now it's up to the Canadian public to say, regardless of political stripe, this is not something that we accept in our country. And that's what the Wii Charity scandal is all about, and that's why you need to follow it. It's why you need to share this video, and it's why you need to talk about it with your friends. It's also why we'll continue as the Conservative Party of Canada to continue to press for answers through all the ways that we have been pushing. A special shout out to my colleague Pierre Poilievre and Michael Barrett, who had amazing performances at the Finance Committee this week in pushing for answers. We're going to do that, and we're going to keep working hard for you. Have a great day.